Hi, Whitney.
Welcome to the podcast where we acknowledge that the ways we are working really aren't working anymore.
We invite you into conversations with thought leaders, coaches, and industry experts to explore strategies for living with more ease and less grind, more flow and less fight. Welcome to Untrained.
Good morning, Iris.
Good morning, Whitney. This is going to be a really fun episode. I'm just going to put it out there.
I'm like, whoa. I'm a little like, whoa.
But you wore leopard print, and I've got leopard print glasses. So
I did, because we knew who our guest was. Who's our guest, Iris?
We have a guest here, Andrea Holland. Hi, Andrea.
Good morning, ladies.
Can you just tell from her sultry voice? We're just just buckle up. Whatever you're doing, just stop and just listen.
No, or light a candle.
Light a candle. We've got a candle in studio. So I'll give it an intro. But keep this in mind, and we're going to talk about it. There is going to be some rebranding. We're going to talk about Andrea Holland rebranding Andrea Holland Communications. So here's our bio for now. Andrea Holland has been in the business of communication, and I wrote it here in all capitals because it is communication, for decades, and she even claims mouthy, broad status. Can you see that fist bump? Before she started her own company in 2012, Andrea was in, this is a list: PR, marketing, a morning show DJ, video producer, broadcasting, and news, etc. I'm just going to add etc.
etc.
You name it, she's done it. What she is most passionate about now is helping others dare to find their voice with a little fun sprinkled in and leopard print. How did I do?
I love that. Fantastic. Thank you.
What's the new one, though? You got to give us a little bit of
I think the latest iteration that I have, and it's always small tweaks, right? It's never, we don't have to be huge in our rebranding or even in the way we show up. It's the littlest detail that makes a difference. And so where I'm leaning towards now is find your voice, make it heard. Instead of daring, no more daring. No, there is no try, only do. Go Yoda. Just find your voice, make it heard. Period.
Okay, we're done with the podcast. That's it. Just slam it down. We're finished. That's it. And that's huge. Our last episode was about women claiming their voice in the corporate space. Yeah. So this is so timely. All these tools to get the voice heard. And not just for women, for men, for anyone.
Every person. It's so important. I recognized early in my career that I had this thing called a brand. And I kind of claimed it. And I remember a lot of people thinking I was being a little ridiculous about it when they were like, well, you work for company X. And so especially in communications and PR and marketing, so you represent that brand. And I thought, no, they only get me from the hours of 9 to 5. Beyond that shell is this Andrea that exists in a time and space that I get to choose. And so whether it was freelance work that I was doing or volunteerism or how I showed up in the community or social activities, that was also part of my brand. And I needed it all to exist in an even playing space where I call it the Spanx syndrome. The women will know what I'm talking about, where you have to be a certain way between the hours of X and X, right? So that the world can accept you. And then, only then are you allowed to take the Spanx off. But people are putting on Spanx every day.
I just was having this conversation with this woman,
Yes.
And I called it the Trojan horse, but I think Spanx was a more appropriate metaphor.
Wait. You have to explain the Trojan horse. Like, what's the explanation for that?
The Trojan. So if you want to get through a gate, right? If you want to get a certain job or certain promotion, right? You have to market appropriately, right? You have to choose what you're going to talk about. And so sometimes you have to, but maybe you have a bigger agenda, but you got to get the seat at the table first, right? So how do you get through the gate? How do you get the promotion? How do you pull up the Spanx to get where you need to go? But then maybe once you're there, you have something that's how you get the platform. So that's more for people internal to organizations versus I think more entrepreneurs. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on
I
that?
think that
Andrea?
analogy, it applies in so many ways. And it's funny when I do like public speaking coaching with clients, for example, I'm obsessed with what are you going to wear? And I know it sounds like a very,
Yes.
silly question, but I emceed something recently where I made sure that I didn't wear a lot of colors. And that's a rule that I always have is be colorful, pop from the background, right? Because if it's a stage with an all black curtain and you're wearing all black, how are you going to pop in the view of your audience? But I knew that this particular stage was going to be the Wizard of Oz in the backdrop. So I was like, no multicolored clothing today. We're going with our Johnny Cash black, right? Because I wanted to pop from the background. But I always tell people the Trojan horse element there is wear something that identifies an element of you that is a surprise to the people in the room. So I don't care
Can you
if
give
it's
some examples?
a scarf, a tie, a shirt that is, a unique pattern, a lip color that is just, I don't know, popping, some earrings that take people by surprise. Because if you are playing it 100% safe, there's nowhere for the audience to go with an interpretation of you. And you're working harder for people to take the leap with you.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So it sounds, I'll give you a great example. I went into one time, I had this informational interview with a gentleman who was, I think he was being nice because a friend of mine had called him. And so I walked into his office and I had on a red coat and I had, my handbag, and it was wintertime. And I noticed when I walked into the room, he didn't offer to take my coat and he left the door open. And I thought, all right. I said, well, I'm going to hang this coat because it's very special to me. Lying. Very special to me. I'm going to hang it behind your door. And may I close this door? And he said, sure. 90 minutes later, I left his office and he said to me, I owe you an apology. I said, why is that? He said, because when I saw your resume and saw that you had graduated from a state college, I wasn't expecting very much of you. But the way you have shown up in this interview makes me compelled to say that if I had a position open on my team, I'd offer it to you right now. And I said, well, thank you, sir. He did offer me a job eventually. I turned it down. But my point is, excuse me, he had one identity for me that he was expecting me to follow. The way that I showed up, the color that I was wearing, the actions, the nonverbal cues that I exhibited in my communication let him know I didn't show up for coffee and pity. I showed up, you're going to take me seriously today, state school or not. And so there are ways to bridge the gap in how you show up for people that it is safe for them to accept you as you are, and then also bring in an element of surprise so that when they decide to rethink how they view you, it's not that far of a stretch.
I'm just thinking, I've spent so much of my life, and I often talk about being a kid of immigrants, like trying to belong in places.
Sure.
So much of my life has been like, how do I Spanx myself?
Same here, girl.
How do I get into the Spanx so that they'll like me?
Yes.
And I see that in my clients a lot too. And you're offering something really interesting about like the element of surprise is really a bet on yourself.
It is 100%. And do it in safe ways. I never encourage anyone to go so far out of their comfort zone that if you look at your safety zone, I call the space that's just beyond that safety zone line, the innovation zone, right? That's where we start to get creative and think of new ways. If you go too far past that, you're in the choking zone, right? You can't breathe. You're uncomfortable. You're wearing Spanx of a different kind now, and you're trying to be something that you're really not. But if you go closer to home and you think about, how do I need to show up in this space? Who do I want to be? So that I can get the objective that I need. And the funny thing is that when I ask, especially women, when I ask this question, I get a lot of answers that are safe. So women and people will say that they want to be a certain thing because they know that if they are that thing, they will be accepted. But the question I have is, who do you need to be so that you can get a maximum return on your investment of time? And so that your employer, your organization, your business, wherever you work, also reaps the reward. And I'll give you an example of this. I worked with a CEO who was a woman CEO of a nonprofit that was particularly, they worked with women. That was their audience. Her board said to her, this was a woman who was very petite and liked to wear a lot of black. And they said to her, we work with women here at this organization. Maybe you need to be more approachable. Maybe you should wear more pink.
No,
I'm not lying to you. This is what they said to her. And this woman was, full disclosure, on the brink of potential removal from the organization. I mean, this was a serious issue. So I came in and I worked with her on her communication, on her brand, on all of that. And one of the things that we talked about, I said, what about this color black for you? She goes, I like black. It's simple. It's easy. I don't have to think about it. I get up every day. I go to my closet. I pick 2 pieces out and I walk out the door. Okay, great. So we worked on her brand and I asked her the question that I'll ask you ladies and everyone listening. If on your most amazing day, you could leave the office, the building, the meeting, the sales pitch, wherever you place yourself in this scenario, and you are firing on all pistons, okay? You are you're doing the thing. But you get to listen to what everybody in the room that you're leaving says about you on your way out the door. What 3 words do you most want to hear said about you? What 3 attributes do you want to hear? Boy, that iris is boom, boom, boom. And based on those 3 words, what is the return on investment? What do you get? What does your organization get for you being those things? I asked her this question. She had such amazing answers. And what we did was she brought that to her board and said, don't ever tell me to wear pink again. What I need to be is 1, 2, 3. And the reason I need to be that is because these are what's going to help this organization achieve its financial goals, its development goals, its community goals. It has nothing to do with pink. And
I think we need a moment of silence.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. It was amazing to watch her do that. It was beautiful. Yeah.
That is, I'm just like, I'm going to write these down right now and I'm going to answer these later because I need these things.
What are your words, Iris? What are your words?
Oh, before I answer that, what I wanted to say or ask Andrea or pose it to you guys is that's how I feel whenever they're telling people you have to have more executive presence.
Oh, God.
And I have literally and I asked them, I'm like, what does that actually mean? And they're like, oh. Yeah. I'm like, yeah. Well, and like, what does it mean?
That's part of the problem with that is that's sufficiently vague feedback. And there have been so many studies done on this that specifically women are 20% more likely to receive sufficiently vague feedback because managers fear that women can't handle feedback. So, for example, when I work with an amazing group of executives, and one of them is working on a presentation, and she got the feedback from her peers. You don't seem like yourself. Just be more you, be more passionate. And I'm like, what in the holy tarnation kind of crap feedback is that? Okay. How about make better eye contact, project more? Can you stand taller? Perhaps don't move as much. It makes me feel as though you're nervous. I need to hear you put emphasis on certain words. That is better feedback. Don't give me, you need more executive presence. How about you go play in traffic with that feedback? I'm sorry, I get heated on this one.
I do too. I hate that. Whenever someone says, I need to work on my executive presence, I was like, we're going to spend the next hour talking about
Break that down for me, Sally, please. Okay? Yeah.
Well, when we were talking about the topic of voice last week, the research says that many women don't get feedback on how they show up in meetings, how they use their voice, and people will do the same thing. You need to speak up more, but they won't get specific. They won't give them an entree into it, and they won't give them feedback that's actually useful. So that's another
Does that irritate
realm,
you, ladies?
very connected, that's vague.
Yeah. Does that irritate you, Whitney? Like, does it just, when you hear that truth, is that bothersome for you?
Well, I think it creates, I mean, going back to what Cheryl said last week, like it creates anxiety because you don't know what's in your control. And the way we diminish anxiety is figure out what's in our control and take action on it. Right. So if we don't know what to do, it's just this vague feedback. And then we just sort of pull our Spanx up higher. I have to try harder. Right.
Amen. Yes, we do.
Then we're less of ourselves and we're less likely to have our authentic voice and we're less likely to be on brand, right? We're less likely to be aligned with ourselves.
No, it's true. And the net result of that is we go in directions career-wise, in many different ways that we don't intend to go. We don't go for job opportunities that we know are available to us because we think, well, I don't know that I have the chops for it. I receive feedback that I need greater executive presence, so I shouldn't apply. Or I'm not going to make that pitch to the executive team, because they're not going to take me seriously. I heard recently that, X, Y, and Z, or there's so many ways that we are cut off at the knees and limited. So it's scarier than just saying, I don't feel authentic, or I don't feel confident, or I didn't show up the way I'd like to today. It's scarier than being uncomfortable with Spanx. It's scarier than that because it's limited capability as judged by others. And that to me is a no-go. We can't have that.
Ooh.
I feel like you might have a story around this too, when someone might have tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also just want to turn that into a statement. When we get pulled off course from ourselves, we're less effective. We're less
100%.
productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a story of a time when maybe it's a client story or even yours, when someone tried to do that to you and you had to take a step back and go, is it really like I need more executive presence, or is it I need to shift something? Because I really want to talk about like how can people discern the difference, how do I get more, because we always talk about building confidence, but how do I understand what I need to work on when I'm getting this feedback?
Oh my God. I'm going through the files of my brain, like, which is the right story? Because I have so many examples of this. I know personally, early on in my career, I worked with, I'm laughing about it now. I wasn't laughing back then, but I was very young in my career and I went in for a job interview. And when I walked in and interviewed with the executive director for this organization, she asked me a question and I let out the most ridiculous Pillsbury Doughboy giggle when she asked me a question. She said, tell me about yourself. And I was like, I'm interested in working here. And I went, I was like, and I thought, take it back, Andrea, take it back. But no, it was out there, right? Like, what am I going to do? And she looked right at me and she goes, stop laughing.
No.
Yeah. And I was like, excuse me? And she goes, I don't like your laugh. Your giggle makes me nervous. It makes me not trust you. And I was like, oh. That left such a mark on me. Now, one of my brand words is fun, by the way. One of my 3 brand words is fun. And the ROI on that is I'm in the coaching space. I'm in the learning space. And you know this. If your client or your people are not able to enjoy the experience on some level, and I call it fun, then they are not able to learn. They're not able to absorb. Yes, we got to get uncomfortable. Yes, we got to try new things, but there has to be a payout. There has to be a resting space, a safe zone, a fun zone. So for me, the ROI is I can't be as effective as a coach, as a leader, as a professional, if I can't have fun, because then clearly you already know I like to laugh. If I can't have fun, it's not sustainable for me. If you can't have fun, you're not getting the maximum benefit. That's what my experience shows. So going way back to early in my career, this person said, don't laugh. I spent the better part of 10 to 15 years in my career being the most like bottled up, tight, I was so uncomfortable. And here's some exact ways of how that would show up. Ready? My hair is naturally curly. I would never go to work with curly hair. I always had to have it blow dried because it looked unprofessional and silly if it was curly, right? That was my impression. I would not tell jokes. I refrained from telling personal stories about myself. I worked very hard to always seem just a step up in the sophistication level from anybody that I worked with. And, it did get me to some places that might have been okay, might have been beneficial for me in my career, maybe got me access to a team meeting that I wouldn't normally have been invited to if I was the silly new person or the silly communications lady. But some of my best experiences in my career have come from fun, have come from silly, ridiculous moments. I remember I got a job offer working as a freelance writer for a newspaper one time because getting off a plane in New York, I took my overhead compartment bag out and clocked in the face a woman standing next to me And I hit her with my bag and she was like, oh, and I was like, I am so sorry. Oh my gosh, right? And here I am getting silly and goofy. Turns out she's the editor-in-chief of this paper. And she goes, I like you. I don't even know you. Are you from whatever, Rochester? I said, yeah. She goes, call me when you get back. I want to talk to you about a writing opportunity. And so began my professional writing career. So, I bottled it up and I think I limited opportunities to network, to try new things, to test out new skills because I was so worried about not showing up as funny. So I've seen a lot of opportunities. I had a client the other day who was giving a presentation and she wrote her story as the ending part of her talk. And when she delivered it, she said the words, but she just said the words. And I said, I need you to go back and I need you to be the words. Live through that story again. Tell me the story. And when she did, tears came from her eyes because she recognized these aren't just words. It's not just a jacket you're wearing. It's not just a story you're telling. It's not just 3 words to describe yourself. It's who and how you are. It's the essence of you. It's how you live. It is what others can expect from you when you're not even in the room. That is how important your brand is in my book.
It's fascinating to me how many clients I work with, and they're so into their day-to-day at work that they forget to do this work. So I'm like, have you ever worked on your brand? Do you know what you're about? And I know we've kind of hit on it a couple of times and even said, it is important to work on your brand. And I want you to maybe talk about some of your clients of like, we worked on the brand, not just for speaking engagements, but here is where we also worked on our brand. Because I do want to encourage everyone, even if you work in a corporate setting and have to put on Spanx. And I do once in a while. Yeah. What is so essential about working on your personal brand? What's important about it?
It comes down to trust in my book, ultimately. Consistency of character and how you show up. There's plenty of data that indicates, as humans, we are categorizing animals. So if every day you walked into a room and you saw a thing with 4 legs that looked like something that you could sit on, you would say that's a chair, right? We learn how to do that at a very young age. If you have kids, right? Like they know, okay, that's a chair. I can sit on it. I can stand on it. I can, do all kinds of things with it. But imagine if every time you walked into a room, you had no idea if that chair was going to suddenly grow teeth and bite you. You would never trust that chair again, right? So when we go into the professional workplace and somebody says they're one thing, but shows up as another, what's the result? Have you guys had that experience? Someone tells you one thing and shows up. What happens? Tell the truth.
I just quit. An organization.
Pain and suffering.
Pain and suffering, right? You go home going, am I crazy? I swear
What's wrong with me?
Right. And so now you begin to trust even less. And trust is critical. It's one of the number 1 factors for teams being successful. Psychological safety and trust. The Google Aristotle project is a great example of that.
Yes.
So if you want to create trust as the foundation for all of your relationships, and I mean personal, professional, everywhere, identify, be intentional first about who and how you intend to be, and then show up that way. And it comes out in a lot of different ways. For example, when you introduce yourself to somebody, tell them, my name is so-and-so, and here's my role or whatever. And when you're working with me, here's what you can expect. Boom, boom, and boom. There's one way to use it. Sprinkle it all over your social profiles. Make sure it shows up in your LinkedIn. Make sure it shows up in your presentations, all over the place, in a physical, in a verbal, nonverbal way, in all the assets that you have. Because that way, when everybody encounters you, whether it's, remotely or in person, they see the same chair every single time. It's not all of a sudden that you are different than what you showed up when you said you were going to be, because nothing can ruin trust faster than that. Someone telling you one thing and showing up another way. So that's the end goal of it. And also it gives you, what's in it for you, autonomy, the ability to choose. That's what human beings want. I mean, there's plenty of research on that. We want the ability to choose our own fate, the ability to say, this is how I'm going to be. So even in moments of change or struggle, when you say, God, cards are stacked against me, I feel like I have nowhere to go here, I feel like my hands are tied, you still have the choice in how you choose to show up. You can still be authentic and strong and confident in the way that you show up. My other brand words are smart and real. So when funny Andrea doesn't want to show up, you better believe real Andrea's showing up. or smart. But it empowers me to be bold when I have to be.
One of the things that we didn't say at the top of the hour is, because we're so excited for this conversation, is what today that we are untraining and what that we're retraining. And what we talked about wanting to untrain is this idea of showing up on our Spanx and being like, how do you see me? Do you like me? Do you not like me? And retraining or rebranding, saying, this is who I am. This is how I'm showing up. This is the way I am consistent. These are my offerings. This is my value. Understanding that sort of from the inside out.
Yeah,
and what do you want? I just want to name that and then ask you to comment on that, because it seemed like it was a perfect dovetail to what you just talked about.
No, it's true. I really thank you for bringing that up, because one of the things that I always despise is when you see all these like Instagram people being like, hashtag be bold, hashtag girl boss. It's like, please, okay, life is a lot harder than that. So how do you, because I think a big part of it is unlearning, untraining the Spanx, what you've been used to. I always encourage people to take it, I call it slow and study. So let your hair down little by little and study the reaction, study the response. I did this years ago by accident with my curls. I was in London for a work trip. I brought my blow dryer. Big mistake. I had to use the hotel blow dryer, and that thing was insulting me with its little the soft breeze. I was like, I need some strength here, okay? I need give me some watts, Suddenly the room fills up with smoke. The little blow dryer that couldn't was dying on me, and I'm like, God dog it, what am I going to do? So here I'm about to interview all these, leaders in London, and I had to show up with my afro, and I was stuck. I'm like, what do I do? I felt like so vulnerable, and I was like, all right, well, we're going to do this today. And I survived it. And I thought, okay, what did I learn? So I encourage people to find an element of your brand, whether it's a word that you want to explore, a look, something about yourself, could be a new hobby that you get into, some element of yourself that you want to explore. And don't just do it and then walk away. Study it. Study the reaction that you get. Study your response to it. Study the elements of it that you loved and didn't love and what you learned about it. And keep studying. Because if you cannot make a study of yourself, then you can expect that the world will be looking at you with a very close and watchful eye and making their judgments. But you need to have your own of yours as well.
Yeah, that's exactly when I'd asked the question of, doing the brand, what does it bring us, right? But I do think that working on my own brand has brought me more confidence and more trust in myself, a better relationship to myself.
Yes.
And to feel like, I know how I want to be and how I want to show up.
Yeah.
And I feel confident in that. And I want to do it and I want to try it. So I do think besides building the trust with others, it really builds trust in yourself. And I think so many of us have to learn that lesson.
Yeah. And I think too, when I talk about the ROI on your brand, identifying what it is for you, confidence comes from a lot of different sources. One of them I say is evidence. So when someone challenges you about who and how you are, and it's going to happen, am I correct, in your career at some point? Every day. And I always tell people, stand where you are, look down and draw a square around your feet. That box is where people want to keep you. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants you to stand in that square, because the minute you move out of that square, you're making people uncomfortable. Why are you doing more? Why are you being the most today, Whitney? Why? I need you to stay small because that's what I was banking on. So when you do make those moves, when you do get bold and confident and try to do something different, expect the world to be uncomfortable. And if you can have an answer through an ROI lens and say, it's important for me to do this and show up this way. And you might want to consider it important for you as well, because in me doing this, you get X. In me doing this, I get Y. That will give you the fortitude and the confidence to stand strong when you're in front of a group of British businessmen with your afro, standing wild going, it's now or never, brother. We're going to do this interview. Here we go. So, you have to have the ROI, or else you're going to say, is it too much for you? I'm so sorry.
I think that also happens. We make ourselves uncomfortable too.
Oh, yeah.
When we do this work. And the one other thing I just wanted to bring up is the way alignment. You're talking a lot in my mind about alignment, because Iris and her glasses that people notice, like that's part of her branding pop. And that's really aligned to her. And when we find something that's aligned with us, that little scarf, those earrings, that's a little different. That's our alignment. And it invites other people into that, to notice that. So I just wanted to also offer that we're going to feel vulnerable when we do this work, and that alignment is also a tool relative to confidence. I don't know if that resonates with you, Andrea, but just
oh my God, 10,000%. I believe in manifesting and alignment and energy and all of that, because it's very real. I mean, it's quantum physics put into a very fun terminology, but really at the end of the day, who doesn't trust the woman who trusts herself? Who doesn't trust the leader who can stand in his own shoes and say, I got this. Are you with me? It's the person who wavers. It's the person who says, I don't know. Those are the people that we step back and go, is this your first rodeo, Sam? Because I don't know if I'm going to follow you into battle here, buddy. You have to show up in ways that you can tell other people, I have tested this for myself. I know who I am and what I'm made of. And I encourage people constantly to own their wins and their learns as part of their branding process. If you can't look back at your trajectory and say, here's where I won and here's where I'm proud of. Here's what I learned about myself. Here's where I was humbled. And tell the story, not just name the thing. Tell the actual story in a way that is compelling and valuable for people. If you can own your own story, you now have more evidence to bolster the confidence that you need to show up in ways that's going to be meaningful. And yes, you will align with others who also trust themselves. You will align, and you will also align with people who are seeking the very thing that you are becoming. And that gives you so many opportunities for mentorship, coaching, and so on and so forth. So, when people say run your own race, stay in your own lane, that's really what that is you becoming aligned with who you are so that you can be the leader that you need to be, and the person and the parent and the partner and the whatever that you need to be when you're called to do so.
So you said you will find and align with people that are seeking what you're trying to be. And I love that too, is to think about, with Whitney, I encourage those spaces for her. She encourages those uncomfortable spaces. And I know you are very close to your sister, and you both encourage each other for those spaces as well. So I do think it's important to name, you may lose people that want to keep you in the square, and you will gain people that will encourage you, because they are also, and I like how you said it, is seeking who you are becoming.
Yeah. I saw a woman post on social media the other day. She said, I know women who are exhausted. I know women who are confident. Yes, I know those women. I know women who are full of anxiety and grit. Yes, I know those women. But I don't know a woman who is well rested. I don't know a woman who feels confident saying, I'm going to take this break for myself. And I thought it was interesting that the last sentence of it, she said, I don't know her yet, but I am working to become her. And I thought, that is fascinating, not just from what the statement it says about women, but the thing that you are seeking to become. You search for it. You look for evidence of it around you, right? Who do I know that exemplifies this? And if they don't exist, then I have to become that person, and I have to carve that space out for myself and make it safe for others to do the same.
And that's how I see branding, is an investment in the person you're becoming.
100%.
Before we go, I do want to talk about you're going through stepping out of a box.
I
And
am.
rebranding. Can you talk a little bit about your current journey?
Yeah, it's terrifying. I'm so scared. I don't know what to. I need a lot of vodka. No, wine. It's terrifying to put yourself out there. So I never coach on anything that I know I haven't been through or that I haven't walked through. So when I say these things about branding, I'm saying it from the lens of, hey, I'm terrified to do it too. But I decided that it was time to elevate, and that I needed to be the person that I wanted to work with, right? Instead of people who are daring, I really want to focus on the people who are doing, right? They're in it. They have started to find their voice. They're not standing on the precipice of it saying, am I worth it? Girl, get in the pool, start swimming. Okay. You're worth it. We don't need to have that conversation. Let's go. But I had to show up that way. And so I did a photo shoot with my big curly afro because you need to see the real side of me. I did it in a more luxurious way. I mean, I'm a single mom of a 4-year-old and I eat macaroni and cheese standing over the kitchen sink, but that wasn't in my photo shoot. No, I showed up drinking fancy things and showing up in a very big way. But the most fascinating moment was right after the photo shoot, I still felt nervous. And I said, why am I so anxious? And I realized I'd crossed over the threshold into a new territory of a brand that was so big, so good, so amazing that I can't ever go back. And so now I can't play small because literally the words that I'm speaking, the assets that I have, the video, the photography is so bold. It's so big. Yeah. No one's ever going to believe that I play small.
Andrea,
what's going on in your head at that time when you're doing that? Sorry, Whitney.
Holy moly. That's what's going through my head is
yeah.
I've done it. I've committed. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm curious. I want to see how it pans out. I want to see who I begin to attract, who's in alignment with me on this, who shows up, how I'm going to say no to the folks that wanted me to stay in the small square, how I'm going to contest it when my competitors come to me and say, you can't do that. I just did. Watch me. So it's a whole new language set that I have to now cultivate. It's a whole new me that has to show up. And I'm okay with that. But it's scary.
What were you going to say, Whitney?
Well, I had a question for you, Andrea, because I'm tearing up as you're talking about this because you're putting words to something that I've been experiencing myself. Okay. And I'll go away for a weekend and sort of work on something related to work. And I'll come home and I'll be like, I don't know how to fit here anymore. So how do you expand, but then still function as you're expanding and as you're outgrowing?
Oh my God. Thank you for being so open about that. I know that's a big aha. I'm curious to know when you say, I don't fit here anymore. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Well, it's just more that, you set up your life and then you sort of, you grow in these certain areas and then you come back and a lot of your time and energy is still required in the old agreements, in the old ways you've invested and allocated your time and energy. And it is slow, right? It's just sort of what you said, like taking this go slowly and steady, go slowly and steady. But I think sometimes things like trips, and I've heard other people talk about this, you sort of, especially women that go away on their work trips and they feel one way and they come home and then maybe they feel another way. So just as we're outgrowing, as we're shedding, what are your tips and strategies for the challenge of that?
I love this question because I feel this deeply too. Like I will go away, I'll travel, and I feel like this sort of free bird, in my space. I love to go to southern Vermont and get away and be on a mountain, and it's gorgeous. And then I come home and I'm like, and I still got to do laundry. It's like, welcome home. But what came to me is so true. I think we all do this. What came to me was embrace the resistance that you feel. And this is something that I love to talk about is you have this newfound self-awareness. I don't need to be this small. I don't want to fit in this space anymore. Something's not working, right? And most of the time we will, instead of trying to lean into the resistance, we'll try to fight it. And resistance shows up in some fascinating ways. Procrastination, escapism. Let me book another trip. Becoming obsessed with other people's issues. I don't want to clean my closet. Let me come fix yours, right? We do a lot of different things in the trying to fight resistance. What I encourage people to do is lean into it. Question, where am I feeling the resistance right now?
I have such a great... Go ahead.
Yes, go. I want to hear your thought.
I was just going to say, I just have the perfect metaphor that I read about with this resistance. Yes. When salmon are swimming upstream, the way they find their way is where the most resistance is. Because if there's no resistance, the water's coming towards them at a higher velocity. Yes. And that's where the opening is. Yes. I love that. See, it's funny. My dad is a 8th degree black belt in martial arts. Karate, Ishinryu. And for years when we were kids, he was like, girls, let me teach you how to get out of a chokehold. I'm like, why, Dad? It's never going to happen, hopefully. But, he would do these pretend holds with us and he would say, how do you get out of this? And of course, we would struggle. We'd try to kick and fight and, curl up and he's 6'3", size 17 ring. You ain't getting away from John Holland, right? And he would say, why are you fighting? You can't win this fight. Lean into it. And he would show us that if we just moved our hip to the left or right and struck back with a ridge hand, we could take out our opponent with one simple maneuver. But his point there was, you don't fight to win, you fight to get away and move to the next step. So with the salmon, with resistance, the thing that you are resisting the most is likely the thing that you most require in order to move forward. So instead of fighting it, instead of running away from it, instead of saying, I'll deal with it later, pause. Look at it. Why does this bother me? Why does being in this office that I come home to, or working in this space, or coming to this meeting, or doing these things, why do I feel like it's keeping me small? What about it do I need to examine? And then what is the one next step that I can take safely to let my hair down, so to speak, and study the reaction? And no, this is not, the Rocky training sequence, where he's running. People like to think that change is a very beautiful montage that we see in a movie with a soundtrack. No, it's ugly. It's slow. It's yucky. It's weird. It's telling somebody, I'm not going to go to this event. I'm not going to go to this event this weekend because it doesn't serve me. No, I'm not attending that meeting. It's women, particularly because this happens more frequently with women, saying no to NPTs and LPTs. Non-promotable tasks and low promotable tasks, saying, no, I don't need to be on the family picnic committee. I'm good. Doesn't serve me. Right? Thanks. No, thanks. I don't really care what napkins you have. Right? It's saying no. It's studying that and recognizing that you will learn something. You will find something. Just like the salmon, you will find the right spot that you need to go into in order to reveal the next iteration of yourself.
I like that if someone signs up for coaching with you, they get branding and also how to get out of a chokehold. Yeah. I mean, 2 things you're going to need.
I'm like, listen, okay? When they come at you, you got a high kick. No.
Well, we're at the end and we could talk to you forever. You are a wealth of knowledge. You have Whitney and I want to now have you coach us, I think.
I absolutely. 100%. Sign me up.
Yay, let's go, ladies.
And I know, so Andrea Holland Communications.
Yep. The website is andreaholland.net for now. That's changing too. But yeah, please come find me on LinkedIn. Let's continue the dialogue.
And I would love you, Andrea. I found you.
Whitney's calling you right after this.
I know, right?
She's texting you right now. And I hope everyone feels that way. I learned a ton too, and I'm very inspired.
Thank you.
I usually end with, what's one thing you want? We've talked a lot. We've said some great things. You've said some amazing things. What's one thing, if they could remember anything from today, what do you want them to remember?
Be free. Just be free to explore, to try, to do something different, and do what serves you. That's it. Let's be free.
What about you, Whitney?
I'm just tearing up. Just close.
Whitney's, you've just you've just spoken to both of our inside souls, and she's tearing up. So I hope everyone
ladies.
feels the same.
This
after
was great.
You were amazing. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
And Whitney, when you're done tearing up, what do we say at the end of every podcast?
Keep crying. No, keep untraining.
Keep untraining.